Hello and welcome to the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. My name is Ross LeCane. I'm bringing my 25 years industry experience together with leading experts around the globe to give you the insights on how to live a better life and grow a profitable mortgage broking business that you are proud of. Welcome to another episode of the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. I'm Ross LeCane. Today we have a fantastic guest, over 40 years of experience that he's bringing to the table to help guide us with his wisdom in terms of what makes a successful mortgage broking business and franchise. Welcome, Paul O'Regan. Paul is the CEO of LJ Hooker Home Loans. He's been in that role for the last 6 years, is it, Paul?
Yeah, it's 6 years now, yeah.
And previous to this, he was 14 to 15 years in Rams, and he developed their franchise model within the business and has a lot of experience and knowledge to pass on to brokers today. So, we met, a couple of months ago where we did some work with LJ Hooker Home Loans, and, we got chatting, and I thought your wealth of knowledge would be great to share. So, welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you, Ross. Appreciate it.
Let's sort of give a bit of an overview in terms of, what I'm keen to understand is, how you got to where you are today in terms of the CEO of LJ Hooker Home Loans and some of the lessons that you've sort of learnt along the way in regards to franchising and sort of growing a mortgage broking business. So, let's go back in terms of when you started in the sort of the broking arena and give us a bit of your history.
Yeah, look, Ross, and thanks again. Look, basically, it really in the broking industry came about through Rams. Even though prior to that, I was in the ANZ Bank and was primarily towards the end of my career there, was with a company called Asanda. And Asanda used to deal with brokers, and the bank back then used to look at brokers as, why would you want to touch a broker? Why wouldn't people come to us direct? And so I sort of cut my teeth in terms of the Asanda side of the business as I'm looking after. I was my first major leadership position where I had sort of, I think it was 70 odd salespeople looking after about 3 different states in the specialised leasing area, and we had to deal with a lot of brokers. Interestingly, over that time, Rams were looking for somebody new to start up in Victoria. And unbeknownst to me, was sort of having a look behind the scenes as to who's who around Melbourne and approached me to join them. So after a really great career with the bank and Asanda, made the move. Loved the idea of a private business and the fact that, own balance sheet, own P&L to run. And so when I joined Rams, it was very much a contracted sales force, employees. And then what we did is we said, hey, look, it's getting a bit tired, that business model. Why don't we look at something new? And so we threw it up in the air, looked at, full broker model, looked at contractors, employees, and looked at franchising. And I was lucky enough to travel and look and talk to a lot of franchise businesses outside of finance as well as in finance, and really started to understand the dynamics with franchising. And that's what I love these days, is just the fact that you're B2B and it's not an employee-employer relationship. And it was really great that we built a great business up in Rams and a great franchise business that's still going today, owned by Westpac today. And over that period of time, I was approached again when Westpac took over Rams to go somewhere else. And I was locked in there for a little while with Rams. So eventually that company that had approached me was LJ Hooker. And I actually joined the real estate side of the business initially, and then was actually put into the home loan side of the business as head of home loans and then COO of home loans and also part owner. But again, it was franchising. And that's what I loved at Rams. As soon as I heard about LJ Hooker, I said, it's franchising, completely different business model to finance, but yet very similar finance and real estate in terms of the way they build their business and how franchisees and how you deal with franchisees. And I suppose the dynamics about that B2B, which a lot of people don't really get. Whereas, one of the areas I'd say is it's really important to understand that. And one of the things I've learned over a long period of time is, franchisees are entrepreneurs, they're small business owners, and they need scope to grow their business. Hence why we've developed a few different nuances to the business models I've been involved in.
Yeah, love it. And I agree. And, I sort of cut my teeth in Wizard Home Loans. So back in the day when I sort of started in Wizard around the year 2000, and, really back those days, it was the big three sort of that played in that space. It was Wizard, Rams and Aussie. Obviously I transitioned into Aussie, but, they were the outside of the big four banks. These were the brands that were floating around at that point in time. And I know, as being a franchisee, the difference between being an employee and a franchisee or self-employed for those self-employed brokers. You're exactly right. You're not dealing with someone, and again, it's more challenging from a management side because I was on the other side, and I was probably the pain in the ass that you deal with the franchises who want it all, and which is funny because I listened to a podcast that James Simon did the other day, and he did it with Andrew Stevens, and I was like, looking from the outside, now I've been out of it for a few years. I was like, he actually had a really good business, right? He's the actual, I could appreciate it, not from a franchisee where I had my hand out, but from the fact that he's run a really good business, and the way that he ran his business was quite good, right? Whereas the franchisee, you kind of want it all, and you've got what's in it for me, and you're sort of always looking out for yourself rather than looking at appreciating the whole business model. So I can appreciate there's some challenges that come with sort of a franchise businesses, and the nuances to lead a franchise business is different to when you're leading, say, when you're working for a Sander and leading 70 PAYG staff to now when in your Rams and the role that you're currently in as CEO of LJ Hooker Home Loans, where you're dealing with the demands of the franchises.
Yes,
yeah,
very much so.
So, and the other thing that I take out of that was, you've run the real estate side of, you're involved in the real estate side, and now, moving across to the LJ Hooker side, that's given you a really good understanding of both models, and in terms of what works for real estate and what works for a mortgage broker, given your long history with Rams. So, one of the things I'm keen to sort of understand today, and obviously you've built a business model around it in terms of that relationship with real estate agents, is how we can better understand what a real estate agent wants, and then how we can deliver that from a mortgage broking side. So considering you've developed that within your business, I'm really keen to sort of get your thoughts on, both what a real estate agent wants and how can a mortgage broker serve that.
Yeah, great, Ross. And when I was back in the real estate of LJ Hooker, I was a COO there for a number of years, and the great thing about that was it gave me exposure to all the real estate franchisees around Australia. And when we were looking at the mortgage side of the business, we said, look, it was probably a bit underdone. Real estate was the big area of the business. And what I did is I took a step backwards and actually went to the real estate franchisees and said, what is it that you want from a mortgage broker? And a lot of them said, nobody's ever asked us that question. And I said, well, I want to understand, because we want to actually build a brand new business model, LJ Hooker Home Loans, and we want to actually make sure that we're actually tailoring it towards what your needs are. So it was a refreshing look at the way things were. And some of the things they told me, it's common sense, but unfortunately, sometimes it gets overlooked when you're building historical businesses and how you actually try to run historical businesses. But things like they wanted people who were business owners. They didn't want a Paul O'Regan home loan guy coming into their business as a sole person, not investing into the brand, rocking up, looking for leads, and adding no value to them. So really simple stuff. But again, they said, what we want is somebody that wants to build a business on the back of the brand, whether that's shop fronts, whether that's staff, whether that's sharing some of the leads or their database with the real estate people and vice versa. It just wasn't happening. And some of that came from the feedback to me was brokers would generally go and call on a real estate agent and just say, "G'day, how are you? Haven't seen you for 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Have you got any leads for me?" And that really, and put it bluntly, really pissed off the real estate people because it was adding no value to them at all. So the way that we looked at it, we said, okay, the way we built our business model today is very much around, we don't even go and ask for business from the real estate guys. What we do is we connect with them, we understand them, and then we start adding value to their business, whether that's providing leads from what we can do, giving some commentary around what's happening in the economy in terms of interest rates, in terms of the pressure points that could come to the sales people or the property management people in the real estate business. So adding that sort of added value and actually getting that real good connection where you continually come in there and then the leads will start to flow without asking for them. So it was a very, very simplistic approach, but one that just wasn't happening. And certainly the real estate people were, as I said, they just said that we saw brokers as people that just came in when they wanted a lead and came out and weren't adding any value, weren't contributing to the brand, the LJ Hooker brand. So therefore we built this new business based around a lot of what we learned from the real estate people, Ross.
Love it. And, a couple of things that you said there resonate with me. I run an accelerator program and I do a series on, creating profitable referral relationships, right? And this is exactly what I teach, is around the value that you can provide. You don't go in giving with your hand out expecting leads, because that's a turn off, right? So, just like in any relationship, there's a courting phase and you've got to add value. You've got to be desirable. You've got to make yourself attractive. How can you make yourself attractive? It's by adding value. So if we dig this and sort of peel back the layers of the onion and say, well, what are the ways that a broker can add value to a real estate agent, right? So in your experience, what are some of the ways that a brokerage can add value to a real estate agent?
Yeah, and look, it just some off the top of my head straight away, Ross, would be, talking to them about somebody that's going to be purchasing a property, whether they actually will qualify for finance. So therefore stopping, I suppose, time delays, people wasting their time. So actually making sure that the people looking to purchase a property will be able to afford their finance. So helping them there and add value. The other one is providing leads. And we know as brokers in the mortgage industry, there is multiple ways we can provide leads to other people. We've got a core logic program in place where we know when people are looking to list their property. So we can actually go to our real estate agents and say, hey, look, do you know somebody in your area is about to list? Do you think you should give them a ring and maybe get on the phone list to say that come out and have a look at listing that property? So there's a number of ways we can, but the biggest one for me, Ross, and what I loved about when you came to our conference and spoke to us, it gets back to really getting that connection and really that relationship with the real estate people and adding value and not asking for leads. That was really old-fashioned stuff. Unfortunately, it's still happening, Ross. I can tell you now, we have LJ Hooker real estate franchisees that say, oh, we had Joe Blow from that brokerage down the road come in asking us for leads the other day, just knocking up to the door and adding no value to them. So it's still happening these days. And that's why we've built this business a little bit differently to what previously it was.
Yeah, definitely. And I know it's still happening because I get on the phone with brokers constantly and ask them, oh, we've tried that in the past. You break down, well, what was their approach? And their approach is exactly what we're talking about, right? They approach things going with what's in it for me and putting their hand out and wondering why it doesn't work. But as in all of life, you get what you give. And so if you give more value, then you will receive that back, and you'll receive it back in spades. So,
and Ross, just to give you a bit of an example, and I suppose it's always good to quantify things and just so people sort of understand. The old business model we had, we were getting about 5% of our settled business from real estate leads, which is really, really poor when you look at it. And when I was in the real estate role, I was a little shocked by it and thought, wow, we've got a really stuffed business model here. When I went outside of our business and spoke to some of the other real estate mortgage businesses, it wasn't that much better. And so I thought, wow, something's not right here. Hence why I went to the real estate franchisees to understand what was happening. Right now, we're sitting at about anywhere between 20-25% of our settled businesses coming from real estate leads. So we're at a huge growth, and we've got less franchisees actually getting that sort of business at the moment. So we know it works. It can be a little bit longer getting that connection right, but it does work, Ross.
Oh, definitely. And in terms of, that's great, right? Because they're getting that lead flow. And I think if you look at it, and I've dealt with real estate agents in the past, and if you understand the mechanics of them and their business, and I think another, point to talk about on the sort of the other side, on the broker's side of things, is, dealing with real estate agents comes down to speed, right? Because I sort of quite often I talk about, leads from real estate agents. In some instance, they're a bit like ice, because if you're not onto them straight away, they melt away pretty quickly. Because you know yourself, right? You go, you see a property, you get excited by that property, and maybe a couple of hours later, you've thought about that property, and you've thought about the 4 things that property doesn't have that you really need. Oh, I need a bath to bathe the kids. I need a garage to store my bikes in. I need this. It doesn't have that. And so with the excitement for that property, the relationship with that agent that may have given you a lead has sort of gone down, right? Whereas if you're on that lead within a couple of minutes from when you receive it, they're still at that peak state, the likelihood of converting and building the relationship is there, right? And so, when it comes to working on the business and providing the systems and processes in the business, we have to align the back end of the business with speed, because I think you probably found that when you were talking to the agents, what they want is that speed.
They do, Ross. And I'll give you a quick example of what that is. The agents and the sales agents, they want to get that sold sticker up as soon as they can, because they want to get onto the next sale and they want to get their commission and move on. We work on very quick turnaround time with our lenders that we've got, so that we can actually meet the needs of the agent. So, if we can say to an agent, hey, look, we'll get you an answer within 5 days and you can get your sold sticker up, so you're not subject to 30 days finance or whatever there's in the clauses, then it makes such a difference in terms of that relationship. But as you said, Ross, speed. It's about speed.
Yeah, definitely. It's about speed. And, it's a good reminder, if you want to play in whatever place that you want to play in, strategically, you've got to align your business to be able to deal with the type of business that you want. So if you want to play in that space where you're trying to get referrals from your back end, better be supportive of speed, what you've done in your business, Paul, where going with this sort of white label approach allows you to control your turnaround times a little bit more, and and sort of deliver on what that sort of promise is.
Yeah, no, certainly does. The other part with the real estate side, Ross, which is very often overlooked, is the property management side. And the property management side, and this is when I said at the start, the similarities between real estate and finance brokers is not that dissimilar in terms of when you've got a business. So the property management book is like our loan book. It's recurring income, it's saleable, it's a database. The real estate people obviously are very protective of that property management book, as we are of our loan book. But once you get their confidence and once you get the right connection, that is what we call the silver bullet, because I'll give you a quick example, Ross. You've got a landlord there who's got 5 investment properties with a real estate agent. They've got, say, $1 million equity in those properties. How would it be if I, as a finance broker or mortgage broker, could get on the phone and say, look, well, I'm from LJ Hooker, you've got your rental properties there. How about we've got some new off-plan developments coming up. We reckon you'd be really good. And I think you've got enough equity in your properties at the moment to actually help you get into this property. Are you interested? And again, you're helping the real estate guys, you're helping yourself, and you're helping create that customer loyalty for LJ Hooker by adding that extra value.
Yeah, so they get a sale, they get another property
management, yeah,
on their books, and you obviously get to do the mortgages
finance,
and get another client that you can get the repeat and referral business from, right? So
correct.
and in my career, we had a good relationship with one of the local real estate agents, and they had a really large rent roll and property management book. And so, we would do joint seminars, and, we did ones on property investment. We did ones on first home buyers. We did things on, adding granny flats to their property, and got a granny flat builder involved as well, because that gives them another door, another rental sort of income. And so there's so many different ways, if you really partner with these guys, talk to them about, again, adding value. And adding value is not just by sort of giving them business, but it's by creating platforms and opportunities, whether that be, a webinar, whether that be an in-person event, or whether that be sort of joint promotions through social media or email campaigns. There's lots of ways that you can add value, not just, by giving business. And I think, when adding value, we've got to think about all the ways that we can add value to real estate agents, not just in the form of giving business. And, one of my top brokers that I was working with in Melbourne gave a great example of, ways that we can all find referrals for real estate agents, and saying, every loan application we do as brokers, we ask a question, and the question is, what's the value of your property? and quite often they'll tell us an answer, and we'll write that answer. But there's a couple of ways that we can do that, right? So what his suggestion was, there's two ways that your property is going to be valued. One, we're going to get a bank value, and we're going to do a bank valuation. Second, is what the market thinks. And the people I know who are best across the market is the local real estate agents. I've got Bob Smith from Home Loans in Parramatta. What about I get Bob to come out there and give you an appraisal on your property, right? So, very simple. We do it all the time, but we don't add that little step. They might say no, but if Bob Smith is a good agent, Bob Smith will want to play the long game, and he'll want to do that appraisal so he has that person on his database, right? And so, simple tips like that in terms of how you can sort of create that bigger partnership and add value. So I love it.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, let's, again, I want to transition into what we were talking about before, in terms of, you've obviously been in management positions for, a long period now, and you've managed a lot of brokers. You've seen a lot of, people who have been successful, and you've probably seen some that have not been successful. So in your sort of leadership, again, what are some of the traits of the top performing brokers that you've worked with in both your Rams and the LJ Hooker franchises?
So there again, looking back with the franchisees that have come on board, both in the Rams days and also the LJ Hooker days, really varied backgrounds. And I suppose the biggest thing for me comes back to you're either 100% in or you're out. And the ones that have been most successful are the ones that are 100% in, have bought into the franchising system. And we've been lucky in that the franchise systems that that I've been involved in and developed have not been narrow franchise systems, because I believe the narrow ones will stop the entrepreneurs from actually being the best they can be. So the systems that we've had are a bit more like that, and we've got some boundaries, but certainly not as strict as a lot of franchise systems. So it's given the entrepreneurs the ability then to grow their business in their own way that suits them. If you try and cookie cut everybody into the same mold, then you're going to, I believe, this is my personal opinion, you'd have a disastrous franchise system. Why would you go into franchising if you're doing that? You actually want to develop and learn from all the mistakes that people make and all the gains and successes that people have. So the ones that have been best in my eyes have always been the ones that are 100% committed. They've got that entrepreneurial flair that will actually make sure they grow from their own strengths, and they use the franchise system for the weaknesses that they've got. And, luckily, again, the systems I've been involved in, we've been able to have really great experienced people that will be able to look after, whether it's marketing, whether it's employing people, whether it's social media, whether it's compliance, that we've had people that can actually pick up the pieces or the weaknesses of a franchisee while they just get on doing their strengths and growing their business from there. But the ones that have really been successful and stepped up are the ones that have got the best connections and the best cultures in their business, but also the ones that are actually looking out there and growing their business, not just sitting there by themselves, expecting that things are going to happen and they're going to grow the business as an optimum that you're going to get to when you're by yourself, where you're going to have to make that decision to actually keep growing. You're going to have to either put people on, or you're going to have to look at a completely different system than what you're doing at the moment. So their ability to be an entrepreneur and have a really good culture. And one of the things, Ross, and I know you were at the conference recently with us, one of the things that I've had my whole career is built around just the right culture and the right people in the business. And that luckily goes down to the franchisees in terms of where they are going to grow their business and what they're going to do in their business as well. So, so that's really, for me, it gets back to that, that culture, the desire, and working to your strengths, and obviously getting people in to help with your weaknesses. And I've always said, Ross, that the biggest weakness a person can have is not putting up their hand and asking for help. And one of the things I always say to our franchisees and their teams is, if you are struggling somewhere, whether it's personally, whether it's in business, don't just suffer in silence. You're part of a franchise group, a group that is not a big group. I've been lucky that I haven't had massive franchise groups with Rams and El Home Loans, and that's purposely been built that way so that we can actually genuinely look after people when they need to. But also make sure that they continue to be successful and grow where they can be. Very long answer to a short question, Ross.
No, that's good. I think, the things that I take out of that is and it's a great book with the same title, Who Not How, right? So it's who can I get to help those areas of weakness that I've got, not how can I do it myself? Because what I find is a lot of people struggle and try to do it all themselves. And rather than investing in people who are going to be much better and do it in a much more efficient way, which is allowing them to focus on the things that they're good at, I'll get a lot more enjoyment and scale. So I think, there's commonality from what you're saying around the people that focus on who they can get in to help them scale. And again, it doesn't come without its sort of challenges and investments and tough decisions. But the other thing you mentioned was culture. How important is creating that culture, even in a small franchise business, to, and again, it's that culture, it's that feeling when someone walks into your LJ Hooker Home Loans office that, hey, these people are here to help. And it's very obvious from the business that you walk into that have it and the ones that don't.
Yeah, and culture is, in franchising and culture, Ross, and when I was lucky enough to go around and look at other industries as well as the finance industry with franchising, I found it was very complicated. The people said, I said, what is it about? What is it that you do? What is your culture? And there's reams of paper and bloody things on walls and all. And I break it down really simply. And this is where I look at creating a really good culture. And first point is really caring about the people. And people can just say caring, I care about you. And that's not really caring. This is about really caring about their people, their family, the people within their business, and treating it like as best you can as a family. Even though we know business is business, family's family, but it is really caring. And I've got so many examples where I won't go into today, where we have really cared about people in our business to the detriment of the business because it was the right thing to do. And that's important to set that culture within the business, that you're not just saying something. The other part is communication, and communication, two-way communication, always two-way communication. Don't be afraid about getting open communication from franchisees. My support team and also the franchisees are really open with me. They're not frightened to actually challenge me about anything that's happening in the business. And I'm really open about everything from the profitability of this business to where we're investing into the business with our franchisees. So there's no hidden agendas, there's no hidden secret commissions happening anywhere. It's all open as to what we do. And then the last part that I look is of the three that I create, the culture part, is profitability and people making profit so that it's making a difference to their lives and their future and their family moving forward. It's no use being in a business unless you're making money. Let's get things clear about that. You're not in business to lose money, which causes more stress, which causes personal issues. We're in this to make sure we're making money. So that's the way I break down in terms of when I say what the culture's like.
What were the three things? Can you go over the three things that you said? So the first one.
So it's basically caring and really caring about people, communication, and the last one is about profitability, profitable franchises. And one of the ways that I sanity check that, Ross, is that we're really open about engagement surveys, and you can be anonymous, it can be open. And so we undertake at least twice a year an engagement survey with our franchisees, and to get some open feedback as well as at conferences and so forth, and when we're meeting them face to face. But I'm really proud about that. The engagement surveys at the moment are the best that we've had in the business, and that's because I'm a better leader than I was a year ago, 2 years ago. If I go back 20 years in my first leadership role, I was a manager and I was a prick, and I was the type of person that I wouldn't want to work for today. But I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot about how to treat people and how to get the best out of people, and actually make good businesses over the journey. And I share a lot of my mistakes and bad experiences with people when I get to know them a lot better. But that's created the situation today, and also back in the Rams days of having really good culture and good leadership skills through some really bad performances by me previously.
Yeah, and that shows you're a leader. You're willing to sort of admit on a sort of public podcast that, hey, I've made mistakes. I wasn't perfect. I've grown, and I think it's important to know, because I see a lot of brokers get to a level of success, and they may get to a level of success pretty quickly, but what they do is they outgrow themselves. Right? They outgrow themselves, and then they don't have the skills to actually manage what they've grown, right? And then so that starts impacting them personally, it starts impacting their personal lives, because they haven't, put the work in to grow themselves personally, because if their business has got to grow, they've got to grow personally, right? And so the skills that got them to there aren't going to get them to that next level. And I think for you, what are some of those skills that, if you reflect back over the last, 12 months, what are some of the skills that you've sort of really worked on in yourself?
Yeah, so personally, what I've done is I've become, and leadership's really can be quite a lonely thing, because as well as being CEO of the business, I'm also part owner of the business. So I don't really answer to anybody, and it's been really tough for me to actually, I actually liked the fact that when I was at Rams, there was a board at Rams that I used to have to go and, for want of a better word, report to, but it wasn't like reporting. It was about basically shooting the breeze, saying, am I doing the right thing here? So where I am in the last 12 months is I actually do enjoy getting people like yourself and outside people into the business that I can talk to and get some new ideas about, am I on the right track? Aren't I on the right track? I read a lot of, the MPA and all the industry things, but I actually like to go outside our industry too. And, I've got mates who are in very different industries that I'll go along to their sales meetings or their corporate meetings or whatever they're having, just to try and understand how they're doing things and whether I can pick up things. But one of the things that I have done in the last 12 months especially is I've got a cracking support team, and everyone says that, but I know I have, and I've had, part of my support team, I've had people who have been with me for 30 years on the journey, and I've had people who have been with me 10 and 15 years, and the least person's now up to about 5 years that's on the support team. And I've let go of basically all responsibilities in terms of getting involved with the way that they want to run their side of the business, whether it's the state managers and they run their state, whether it's the product and marketing who's created the white label program, whether it's the compliance person. I've become basically a mentor, just sitting there listening, asking them questions at times, but very, very rarely telling them what needs to be done. more about asking them, what do you think needs to be done in the business to keep growing the business, and where have we made mistakes? Where do we fix it? So again, learning that you just let go gives you the ability to keep growing, and also gives them the ability to keep growing as well. The retention's a big thing in this day and age of people. And I've been lucky that I've had cracking teams around me in terms of longevity with me. So a part of that is, just giving them ownership. And the big thing with me, Ross, is once I've got somebody on board, I trust them implicitly in the team, whether they're franchisees, whether they're support staff that are helping the franchisees grow their business. And for me, family comes first. And we've got situations at the moment, both within the franchise and the support team, where there's really major personal issues going on. Business then comes second, third, fourth. And I've said to them this, I said, you don't have to ring me up and tell me that you need a day off or whatever. That's not the type of business that we're in. There's no hierarchy structure in this business that I've created. So again, it's really about trusting people, and it gets back to that word culture. If you've got the right culture, you're not second guessing your people in your business, and you will continue to grow yourself as well personally.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, that's a great message for anyone who's looking to employ staff and grow, and really to be able to let go of what you're doing now and to trust and empower someone and ask them the questions, why it's not working, what are the mistakes, what can we do to improve it, what are the suggestions that you've got? Because, quite often what I see is, especially in a broking industry, you might have a banker that's sort of done the whole process, and, to let go of the things that they shouldn't be doing, those $35 an hour tasks, so they can focus on the $2,000 an hour tasks, is very common, right? They want to be that point of contact. They want to do the things, rather than having, your LJ Hooker Home Loans Parramatta office that's providing the service. It's, they want to be the one that gets the referrals and gets the name. They've got to change the paradigm in terms of the way they think about their business, and to give up control. And what you said is, how we give up control is we've got to trust. Otherwise, who is responsible? You're responsible for everything, and it's going to really ham your sort of growth within the business. So on this sort of point, in terms of, it's interesting, your business model, in terms of, you use a lot of sort of white label funding. And, for people who aren't familiar with the sort of business model, do you want to sort of explain your business model a little bit, to give people an understanding of how LJ Hooker Home Loans works, and we can dig into the white labeling a little bit.
No worries. Yeah. And Ross, you're being very kind when you say it's different, because a lot of people have called it many different names, and different's probably a good one, but it is a very different model. When we put the model together, there's a couple of things. We knew we had an iconic brand that we were part of, and it's a 95-year-old brand heading towards a 100-year-old brand, but mainly real estate. But it still gives you the ability to get into the door, and it gives you a brand versus, a Ross Home Loans or a Paul Home Loans. So we had the brand. The old business model was just a pure broker model. It was a sub-aggregation model. So when we bought the business from LJ Hooker, so myself and another business partner bought the business from LJ Hooker Real Estate, we said, let's have a look at a brand new business model. And being part of RAMS and being a securitized lender, and it was really it wasn't a broker model, even though it had a little bit of a third-party stuff happening there. So we said, look, what we want to build is a brand new business for what we believed was sort of today and the future going forward. There was a lot of noise about Royal Commission and conflicted remuneration. So we had to say, look, what do we want to be? So what we did is we put together what I think is probably the best white label program in the market, but I'm a little bit biased. So we have 6 white label lenders, of which we get really great turnaround time, great access to their BDMs, good competitive interest rates. And we also have what we call a couple of other lenders that aren't white label lenders, just in case that white label lenders don't fit, or we can't get the credit through or whatever. It doesn't happen that often. Majority of our business does go through white label lenders. And as I mentioned before, some of that speed associated so that we can get to the real estate guys and say we've got the approval for you. But the other things that we built into the business, which is important, is that we've only got 58 territories in Australia. So we're looking for people that want a medium to large size business. We want people that want to grow a business. We're not looking for the sole broker that just wants to sit there and try to grow a sole business by themselves. So the good thing about the 58, Ross, and we could have cut it up into 300, but the 58 to me, and it could have been 60, it could have been 55, but it's 58. The great thing for me is that I know that we can provide the right support, that caring, the communication, the business growth for 58 franchisees. If it gets into 300s and 400s, it gets pretty tough. You've got to have a big infrastructure below you. You've got to have a big machine to make it happen. But we also wanted to make sure that the franchisees coming in, Ross, had the ability to grow. It's really hard that if you're in a franchise business and you've got a small patch to look after and you're trying to grow, so you've got to try and get another patch. Some people won't let you do that. Some people will. But for us, we wanted to give massive patches. They've all got real estate offices in those patches so that we can generally get people on board that want to grow that business. So that's attractive for some people. We look at recruitment like the old triangle pyramid, where there's lots of people interested, and it's sort of, as you start learning a bit more about our model, people get less interested, and then you get to the pointy end where people really like what we're doing. The other really important one that our franchisees feed back a lot to us is that we've got a loan processing team. So basically, for $395 a month, regardless of the amount of files that are put in for each franchise, you've basically got somebody that will do all of your data entry, that will be like a backstop in terms of the pay slips out of date or whatever before. So it makes it go through, reduces your rework rate, gets your speed again. So again, we've built, I'm not going to go into all the advantages that we see of our business model, but they're the main ones, is that we've got great white label program. We've got obviously the loan processing team. We've got these large territories as well. And as I said before, the engagement survey we've done has come back in terms of support we provide is just really, really strong, that we are doing the right support, which is what we say we do about caring about people and the communication. I suppose the acid test again comes back to how well are we going? And I'm really proud to say that anybody that's been with us for 2 years or more of our franchisees are in the top 50% of the MFAA tables that they come out in terms of how much people are riding. So we've got nobody in that bottom 50%. And we've also got a number of franchisees who have only been with us for 3 and 4 years that have got $100 million loan books. So we know if people come and they come with everything we've spoken about today, that they can be successful. And that's by us helping them. It's primarily about them because, they're the entrepreneurs, they're the people that are putting their livelihoods on the line, but we do provide genuine support to help them in terms of different areas of their business, Ross.
Love it. And I think, having that number of different, white label offerings and, speaking to the guys at the conference when I was there the other day, I was saying, are they competitive? And he's like, yeah, like they stood behind and they're like, yeah, they're super competitive. And, talking about, some of the different niches that you guys play in, whether that be, one of the guys that I was talking to was saying, he does a lot of self-managed super fund lending, and you've got a vehicle that provides competitive rates on that. And it's a bit of a niche that he can provide. And so, putting themselves not only in the niche of real estate, but in, well, what can our offerings that we offer on a white label, how can that differentiate us in the market, and really playing to the strengths of what those white label products can allow them to do.
Yeah, one of the other things, Ross, which I just have come to my head is, which is important too, is, and this goes again in terms of the culture and the business that we've grown, is that if after, it's a 5 by 5 year franchise agreement, if after 5 years somebody wants to get out, there's no loss of trail. So we're not trying to handcuff people. We believe that if we're doing the right thing and we are the right business and we're backing up everything we're saying, people will not want to leave us. So we basically said, let's put that in place so that people know that, hey, look, they can walk away without any loss of any trail, which is pretty unique for a lot of the businesses out there.
Definitely in a franchise model. I don't think you with one of the branded ones, at least the ones I know, it's very rare, right? So, and
Yeah.
especially after that term. So, love it, love it. In terms of, I want to wrap this up, but one of the
Yeah.
questions I ask all my podcast guests, and you've been in the industry for 40 plus years, as we said. So what would be your piece of advice, your sort of one big takeaway for someone looking to grow and scale their mortgage broking business?
Yeah, and this comes from experience, because I've seen the people that have asked this from me. And for me, it's do not try and do everything yourself. If you try to do too much, and it gets back to that, you'll get goal diffused, you'll do nothing really well, you'll get frustrated. So for me, if you want to grow your business, whether it's talking to Ross, whether it's coming and talking to different franchise groups about how we can help grow your business, don't just sit there and think you're by yourself. Within the industry, there's lots of people that can help you. And then once you've committed, you commit to a 100%. And you make sure you've got a really good, robust plan in place that you can tick off, or you've got somebody that's going to keep you honest if you want to continue by yourself and grow with support behind you in terms of not loan writers or other brokers, but if you do admin support. But again, it's not just sitting there just thinking you can do it yourself, because there's not too many people that can successfully do it themselves.
Yeah, well said. It's such a complex business. There's so many elements in it that it's not that business that you can run as a solopreneur. So great advice. And thanks so much for your time, Paul. I think, there's been so much value. And again, it comes from that place of wisdom that you're obviously sharing because you've been around the trap. So thanks again. It's been a pleasure.
No worries, Ross, and thank you again for having me. And thanks again for your contribution at the recent conference. It was fantastic.
No worries.
Thanks, Ross.
So this has been another episode of the $1 Billion Broker podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, there's a number of ways. One, follow us on the podcast on your favorite channel, whether that be Spotify, Apple, or the favorite channel. Otherwise, you can join us on the $1 Billion Broker Facebook group for mortgage brokers. If you'd like to inquire about being coached by me, reach out to us at billiondolarbroker.com.au, and I look forward to having a chat. Until next time, I'm Ross Lacane, and we'll talk soon.